God created us, and God created marriage, and I believe God brought us together. And believing that, I just can't treat it lightly. I can't treat her lightly. I can't treat our relationship lightly because it's a gift. We met in 1974 when we were both work study students in the political science department at Middle Tennessee State University.
When Ray asked me for our first date, I didn't know him at all, except just chit-chat over the copy machine in the political science office at MTSU. So before I wanted to say yes, I asked my good friend and my student advisor, who was also the director of my work study, what he thought about me going out with this guy named Ray Notgrass, whose name I had seen in the student newspaper a lot because he had a regular column about political issues of the day, kind of prelude to the podcast he's doing now, I guess you could say, in a way. I asked Curry Peacock, my professor, what do you think about Ray Notgrass? And he said, I think it'd be great. He's a nice person. And I was so relieved because he was so mature. I was afraid he might be a married graduate student, and I wasn't going to go out with a married graduate student. So after Curry gave me his approval, I said, sure.
Our first date was on March 1st, 1974. And then after spring break was over, we saw each other every day for several weeks, maybe 2-3 months. And we came to know pretty quickly that we thought each other was special. And so on May 24th, we went out to a special place in my family's story, and I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. And she said yes. And that was in May, and we got married in December.
So you'll notice that was not quite 3 months from first date to engaged when we were in Oxford, Mississippi, and Ray was a campus minister. I taught a class of junior high girls. I would pick them up from school in the church van. We had this class once a week and did activities. And I was telling them how quickly Ray and I went from first date to engaged. And I said, now just because I made a mistake doesn't mean you have to. And I didn't at all mean that I made a mistake in who I married. But I was cautioning them about maybe you didn't need to jump into this so quickly. But it's worked great for us. 47 years later, I'm really glad we did.
I think we're each grateful for our parents, who they were and what they meant to us. In our early months and years of marriage, I think we're like sponges. We were just soaking up whatever spiritual information, perspectives we could get. And God blessed us with some just amazing people that we were able to spend time with, watch them, appreciate their faith, hear them, what they had to say. And I think that had a big impact on us.
At the time that we were getting to know each other, we were both at a point, and I really believe that it was God's hand, that we wanted God. We wanted to follow Him. And God just blessed us with people who were wonderful examples. So I really believe that a key to a strong marriage is seeking God first.
God created us, and God created marriage, and I believe God brought us together. And believing that, I just can't treat it lightly. I can't treat her lightly. I can't treat our relationship lightly, because it's a gift. And so I want to be a good steward of that, because what I do in my marriage is a strong statement about what I really believe, what's really important to me. I don't want to be, I don't think I've ever really wanted to be one person in public and another person at home. I have known that that's not right. That's not the way to live. And so, not that I've always done it perfectly, but my most important human relationship is with Charlene, and that I want to honor God in that.
Ray and I aren't still married after 47 years because we're perfectly compatible and we're perfect. I'm a perfect wife and he's a perfect husband. We are still married to some degree because God wants us to be, because he told us that's what marriage is. And so I am very grateful to God. And I think when people lose sight of that, then you open yourself up to the possibility of my marriage isn't going to last, or I'm going to look over here instead of over here. And the commitment to God is what sometimes, life is so hard, that's all you've got. And so it's crucial.
If I were going to counsel a young couple about marriage, I would say it takes a lot of love and really learning the meaning of love, what's best for the other person, constant love in every circumstance. I think it takes a lot of forgiveness, a lot of patience, because you are two very different people. As much as you love each other and feel like there's a good closeness, a good bond, you are different. You have different ideas and different ways of doing things from each other. And I think marriage is a good place to bear the fruit of the Spirit. I was thinking about those attributes earlier. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. You can camp on each one of those for a long time in terms of marriage and what the meaning of those is for a married relationship.
There are two statements that Ray and I make a lot. I'm sorry and thank you. Those are 4 words you just hear. We hear a lot around our empty nest now. And I think a willingness to say I'm sorry is a humble, those are humble words. They say, I messed up, I'm admitting it, and I'm sorry for what that did to you. And thank you also is comes from a grateful heart. And you're more likely to keep loving a spouse that you're thankful for and that you are willing to say I'm sorry to. Because we're human beings, and everything we have is a gift. Everything Ray does for me is nothing because I deserve it. It's because of who he is and what he's decided to do. And so we need to be grateful for lots of things. And probably if somebody followed us around all day, they would think, well, that's a very little thing to say thank you for. But those are very important words, and they do so much for your heart. to hear I'm sorry and to hear thank you.
In our marriage, we have come to have understandings and agreements, ground rules. Many years ago, I heard a story of a counselor, I believe he was a minister, working with a couple, and they were having conflicts, and whenever the wife would bring up a problem she was having or a behavior that her husband was engaging in that just wasn't helping their relationship, he would always say, "That's just the way I am. That's just the way I am." And after a while, the counselor said, "There's only one I am. The rest of us are made to change." And so I have never been able to say, "Well, Charlene, that's just the way I am," because we're in the business of changing. And that's scary and uncomfortable a lot of times, but it's good because we're different, and it has helped me to grow. I would like to think that I'm self-sufficient and I've got this life thing down and this marriage thing down, but I'm broken and I'm incomplete, and Charlene has helped me to grow, to become more sensitive to people, well, I think of her as the best person I know, and so she has taught me a lot about following the Lord and loving people, and I appreciate that. Not always easy, not always received. I have not always received that teaching as I should, gentle as it is. But in the long run, I know that I'm better for it. One guideline, ground rule that we learned a long time ago was not to criticize each other in front of other people. I think that's very helpful. Jokes about husbands and wives are standard fare. They're just all over the place on television, in small groups, at church, you name it. But criticizing or joking, which is kind of a mixed message, about your spouse in front of other people, one, it hurts. Two, it leaves your spouse wondering, well, what does he really think about me? And so we just don't do that. That's just something that we don't do.
I think sometimes one of the issues that are hardest for couples to deal with is their relationships with their extended family. A lot of times, always, your family of background is going to be different from your spouse's family of background. And so I am grateful that Ray and I really learned to love and cherish each other's families, especially each other's parents. And because of that, when the time came that his dad needed to move in with us, I loved him and wanted him here. And the same thing happened when my mother needed to move in with us. Ray really loved and cherished my mother. And Ray's daddy gave me some wonderful, very simple marriage advice one time. We were almost always a one-car family. We're still a one-car couple. And so when Ray was working at a church office as a minister, I would often drop him off at work. Well, one day Ray's daddy was with me when I dropped Ray off at work. And I said, "I love you." And afterwards, Ray's daddy said to me, "Keep loving him." And I just cherish that. I have followed that advice. We should never be afraid to get help from other people in our marriage or our family. It's not something that we just innately know. There isn't something wrong with me if I have questions. And I know this is true because there's a reason that God inspired Paul to tell Titus, to tell the older women, to teach the younger women what? Two of those things were to love their husbands and to love their children. Well, in some ways, in a romantic movie, then loving your husband might sound like the most natural thing in the world. And when we hold our newborn baby, the idea of loving our children just feels so natural. But that doesn't mean in every situation, every day, we're necessarily going to know the best thing to do to love our husband or to love our children. And so it's okay to have questions and it's okay to get help.
Ultimately, this world is not going to give us security. There's too much uncertainty, too much change. This stuff passes away. And so we can't look to this world for our rock solid foundation for our lives. That has to come from God, from the unseen. However, in this world, we need some stability. We need some anchors that we can count on. And marriage gives that to us, both to the couple and to the children, as far as who I am and what my relationships are. And marriage is a way that we can bring a level of certainty and security that will help us in our lives. If someone has the basic question of who's my spouse going to be next year, or if a child is unsure what his home is going to be like and who's going to be living in it in 6 months or whatever, that shakes us. That doesn't allow us the foundation we need to know who I am in relation to other people, our identity as a person, as far as how we live this life. Now, we probably don't, on an everyday basis, need to think, civilization depends on our staying together. If we have a conflict, say, but Charlene, Western civilization is dependent on our staying married. But it gives us a chance to be what Paul says in Philippians about being lights in the universe, that we can be a positive influence for good. We can shine amid all the darkness around us. And not only is it good for us, but it's also good for our society to realize you can stay together, you can grow as a couple, you can have that kind of stability and certainty that enables you to accomplish important things.
It's easy to be worried about the future of our culture because marriage doesn't have the respected place generally in the whole culture as it did when we were children. When I was a little girl, I knew one child whose parents had divorced. Just one. And so it's easy to lament the state of the culture. But we need to remember that marriage is God's idea. He created it. It's one of the very first things that the Bible talks about is marriage.
I think a key to a good marriage relationship is to understand the importance of respect and cherishing, what Paul talks about in Ephesians 5, where he says, "Wives, be submitted to your husbands, respect them. Husbands, love your wives." as Christ loved the church. But before that, he says, be submitted to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives, to your husbands. So there's a submission, proper submission. But then I think husbands need to be submitted to what is best for their wives, be submitted to hearing them, and as Peter says, to live with them in an understanding way. Husbands cherishing their wives, wives respecting their husbands. It's what we want. We want to be cherished and respected. It's treating the other person the way we want to be treated. And I know what a jewel Charlene is, what a gift she is. And so it would be wrong for me to treat her in any other way than cherish her. And that's what I want to do.
And he's good at it.